Hey y'all, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Vashti Sayre, and you're tuned in to another episode of All the Things, where we literally talk about all the things. So it's been a minute. It's been a hot minute since I've released a video, and that's because I've just chosen to spend the last month of maternity leave fully focused, fully just in mom mode. And I'm loving it. I'm loving all things mom. I'm loving all things parenthood. It hasn't been easy, but it's been one of the most rewarding journeys that I've been on in a very long time, and probably for the rest of my life. It's been the most absolute wonderful thing ever. So actually today, that is what we'll be talking about, things I didn't know about postpartum. And, there's a lot of narratives out there about what it's like for postpartum, what it's like for women, what it's like to become a parent. And disclaimer, I don't want to start this episode off or this whole topic sounding, this is doomsday, this is awful. I'm just basically giving an example per se of what postpartum will look like for you if you are currently pregnant, but also things that I've researched as well, women that I've talked to that have walked or are currently walking postpartum. What I did was in the past couple of weeks, I've just asked a lot of questions to new moms, like, how are you doing? What have you been going through? What are the symptoms you're having? Because this can be a lonely journey if we choose to. And that's the key. It's a choice, whether or not postpartum for you is hard and lonely. And I say that with grace because it can be hard because it's just hard. But it also you have to choose your hard. And I will get into that at the end of this episode. But before we jump into today's episode, let's talk about our sponsor for today. Our sponsor is Every Life Diaper Company. I talk about them all the time. They're pro-life. They love children. They love family. And they make premium diapers and wipes for your babies. So use my code VASHTI10. That is VASHTI10 for 10% off your first order. Alrighty. So things I expected. Let's talk about that. Things I expected postpartum to be like. Well, before I jump into that, I probably should go back a little bit more. What I expected birth to be like. So Sarah, my daughter, she came 3 weeks early at 5 pounds, 6 ounces, 36 hours of labor, and she just popped right out. But it wasn't easy. There were certain complications that we weren't expecting. One in particular was that my placenta was stuck. And even though they tried massaging it out, trying all these natural techniques, it just wouldn't come out, and it became life-threatening, where I lost over a quarter of my blood. Or not a quarter, I lost over a third of my blood supply, and I blocked out. Completely lost consciousness, and I don't remember anything other than the doctor placing Sarah on me. And I remember looking at my husband and saying, we have a girl, because we didn't know the gender. I remember saying, we have a girl, and I said her name for the first time, Sarah Joy. And I remember that, and then I remember waking up to hearing my husband saying, stay with me, Vashti, stay with me. And what I didn't know, what was going on between them placing Sarah on me and waking up to stay with me, Vashti, and my left arm burning, feeling like it was on fire, was that in the room, it was as if it was like this, not crime scene, but this scene that you see on shows where they're trying to save someone's life. And Jared describes it. The world is still around you, or the world is still in the moment, but around you, everything is chaotic. So doctors are coming in, nurses are coming in, blood is all over the place. He's holding on to me and just trying to keep conscious. I also remember my mom was praying next to me as well. I remember hearing her prayers, a little bit of it, and Jared's prayers, but it's just very chaotic and trying to stabilize me, and then having blood pump into my vein to try to get me back to consciousness. So that happened. They finally got the placenta out. And I probably didn't even explain. So the placenta got stuck. And the reason why they had to perform a procedure is in order to get that placenta out. And it's called a DNC. And what they do is essentially they scrape the insides of you and get your abdomen, just, it essentially just wears out your abdomen because it scrapes everything and tries to get the placenta out. And yeah, it was a wild ride. I don't quite remember a lot of it other than having Sarah in my arms for the first time, hearing her first cry, and then just watching Jared be the best dad ever. So, so that I did not expect. And that kind of somewhat, kind of outlines the rest of, or what postpartum would be like, which is painful. Physically painful. So I expected my water would break because we opted for the natural route. I know there are plenty of different options out there, but with our doctor, we talked to Dr. Brown, phenomenal doctor, by the way. So if you need information on who we used, and if you're local in the DFW area, let us know. We definitely highly recommend him, and we will choose to use him if he's still in practice for all of our children. But we spoke to him when we first got pregnant, and we told him we wanted to do a natural pregnancy. And his response was, well, women have been having children for centuries, and it's quite possible to do natural, even though there are alternatives. And that's not dismissing or putting a damper on if you choose a certain route. But I knew the way the Lord designed the female body that we're more than capable. And there are different means to get the job done, quote unquote, but I wanted to trust the Lord in this process. And this was something for Jared and I both. We just went in confidence, knowing that the Lord would guide and be with us throughout the entire process. So, so after the DNC, that kind of laid the foundation of what postpartum would look like. I expected water broke, 4 or 5 hours later, baby pops out. Yay, everyone's happy. I go home the next day and I'm back working out within a week or two, because leading up to getting pregnant, super active in the gym, squatting to 240 to 245 pounds. My legs are pretty strong, running, doing marathons, and, just very, very active. During pregnancy, I was running up until the 7th month. The 7th month, I ran my last 5K, still in the gym up until the night before my water broke. I sprinted with Jared and we ran through Costco's parking lot, but we also went to the gym before that. So super, super active, did everything I could possibly do right. Ate right. I could count maybe on my 10 fingers, how many times I gave into a craving per se, but I just chose to just eat right. I enjoy pregnancy, but not indulge in things. So yeah, did everything right. And I just thought, because I did everything right, delivery will look a certain way, postpartum will look a certain way, and it did not. And because I had all these big expectations of what postpartum would look like for me, and it didn't look that way, it made it very difficult to walk through postpartum. Because for someone who's very active, very on the go, very, has a time frame to get things done, and to be told you have to sit and you have to be catered to, you can't lift anything, your abdomen will be sore for 6 months to a year as it's healing. What you went through was traumatic. You almost lost your life. To sit and hear that was very discouraging, because I had a plan, and my plan was get up, go, be the best mom and wife possible, and I had to just sit. And that sounds, you might think, oh, Vashti, you're just being so dramatic. No, for someone, and some of you out there might be like me, where you're a go-getter. You do things, you're active, you're always on it. And in the delivery process, or after the delivery process, and throughout the whole pregnancy, I just learned to depend on God even more. But it wasn't until I hit postpartum did I realize pregnancy is out of my control. The entirety of it, pregnancy is completely in God's hand. And that's why they call it the miracle of birth. The entire thing is miraculous in itself. So that's what I thought, postpartum would be. I thought the bounce back would be easy. I thought, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, all these things would just play out perfectly. Life would be great and I would be Vashti. But that is not what happened to me. And that's not what happens to a lot of women, most women for that matter. And again, this is not to discourage or put a damper at all. It's essentially to just give hope and share truths of what postpartum looks like for a lot of women. And if you're going through it, to encourage you that it's absolutely normal. It's very normal what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, what you're going through. So one of the first things is hormones. Crying every 10 seconds, it feels like. I'm not a crier. I'm not naturally I'm not a crier. But the first day we got home after being in the hospital or after being discharged, I took a shower. And Jared was outside in the living room with my mom, and I guess he noticed I was taking a while. He comes in to check on me, and we have a glass door, and he looks at the door, and he's like, "Are you okay?" I am sobbing, just drenched in water because I'm showering, but also sobbing. And he's like, "Are you okay?" And I told him, "No, I am not okay. Life is different. I am not me. I am in pain and I can't do anything. I am fully dependent on you and my mom. I'm fully dependent on everyone else." And I think the reality kind of hit me there when I was showering because I got home, was settling in, and it just hit me. Like everything's changed. It's changed beautifully. It's like having a child is the most beautiful thing you could ever do in your life, but it's changed. And especially for someone who doesn't bode well with change, if you're a person that don't bode well with change, it can hit you really hard. And I allowed myself to cry. And I'm thankful that I have a husband that encouraged me. And he just sat there and he asked me, he's like, do you want a hug? What do you need? And I just needed to embrace him and cry and just let it all out and weep, mourn, because me is no longer me. And I'm now on this journey rediscovering who the new me is. So hormones are all over the place. You'll understand it if you've just given birth, or if you've had a child or you're about to have a child. You will understand the reality of your hormones being all over the place. And I always thought, women are they just exaggerate. It's not that big of a deal. No, when your hormones are out of whack and your body is readjusting, it does a lot of wild things. So another thing is lack of sleep. Lack of sleep is one of the things that most, if not all, parents will endure. For some, it will be lack of sleep for an entire year. For us, praise the Lord, it was 2 months. And then our daughter just miraculously started sleeping 8 to 10 hours during the night, and we're not complaining. So yeah, lack of sleep is one of those things. You have memory loss. You're irritable. You can't really function well. So the first 2 months for most parents, sometimes it's a year, like I said, or more. Lack of sleep is one of those things that will hit you hard, especially if you're someone that is used to taking naps, used to having deep nights of sleep. It'll hit you out of nowhere. Another thing I didn't know about postpartum is full or sore breasts. Now, I knew I would be producing milk because even before giving birth, I was already leaking and lactating a little bit. So whenever Sarah came and I started producing more milk, your hormones signal, ding, 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 the baby's here. It's time to produce milk. It just came, and it came in full force. There's the likelihood of getting mastitis. Mastitis is when you have an infection where a duct or one of the glands is full and stuck and it can't release. So I got mastitis not once but twice, unfortunately, within the first 4 months of giving birth to Sarah. And yeah, not fun. I'm not going to get into the details of that. If you're a mom, you understand. If you're not a mom or you're about to be a mom, just do your research and try to prevent mastitis as much as possible. again, we went the natural route. I didn't take antibiotics for it. I just fought through the fever, chills, nausea, soreness, everything, massaged it out. And within a day or two, fought mastitis. So that's another thing I didn't know about. Also, leaking during the night. I did not know that. I don't know, maybe it's just my naive mindset, but I thought milk only came when the baby cried or on demand. No, for women like myself who have an oversupply, I have a buku's amount of milk in our deep freeze or in our freezer because I just supply a lot of milk. And I used to pump the first 2 months. I quit pumping. And then after that, it is what it is. I pump every so often if I'm feeling overly full and Sarah's not quite hungry. But yeah, you just leak all the time, everywhere, especially at night because my daughter sleeps 8 to 10 hour stretches. She doesn't wake up to eat. So I am full and I go through 10 different t-shirts at night because I'm always just leaking. And I personally hate being sticky, just hate it. So yeah. Have to go through many different t-shirts at night. So yeah, laundry is pretty extensive. Another thing is bodily discharge. After birth, I knew that you'd have to wear diapers. Both you and your baby would be walking out in diapers. But what I did not know is how long that period of diapering would be occurring for you as a mom, especially for the procedure that they did, the DNC. I bled significantly there in the hospital. That's why I had a blood transfusion. And typically, most women would bleed 2 to 3 weeks after giving birth vaginally. I bled for 6, almost 8 weeks because of the procedure that was done. There was a lot of healing that needed to happen. And my body just needed to discharge whatever else wasn't allowed in there and then finally healed properly. Soreness. If you vaginally gave birth, you're planning to vaginally give birth, expect to be sore, expect to just be uncomfortable in that area, rightfully so, because it was a very big thing that happened and a child came out. So understandably so, very sore, discomfort, painful. But I say all that to say, when you look at your child, you won't remember it. And I always thought people said that facetiously, but like legitimately, you look at your child and you think, wow, I would do this a million times over and over again. Hemorrhoids or constipation is another thing. If you tore or if you're planning to give birth vaginally, there's a likelihood of you tearing. I tore, I believe it was a 2nd-degree tear, so not too bad, but bad. You'll have constipation because you are scared to go because you're scared mentally, psychologically, you think you're going to tear again. It's a weird dichotomy, but so you'll experience that, or you might, I don't want to say for any of these, by the way, let's just pause for any of these. I'm not saying you will experience this. I'm just basically giving examples of things that you can experience or you might experience based on my journey, based on women's journey that I've talked to and I've interviewed one-on-one. Another thing, hair and skin changes. Now, I personally haven't had this issue, but a lot of women that I know and I've talked to have had hair loss, skin changes. I did lose little dark spots on my body. I had very, very dark spots on the sides of my breast, different areas of my body. The pigmentation was a lot darker. Behind my legs got super, super, super dark. But I haven't had hair loss. Actually, my hair got thicker. Praise the Lord. And I already have thick hair, so I'm not complaining there. But for a lot of women, they have hair loss and skin changes and skin color changes, or they'll have more pimples or less pimples depending on, it also depends on how they eat. But that's another thing that women have said. And for me, it's the skin color changing. One of the big ones is mood changes. And this one I'll spend a little bit more time talking about because I think it's one of those things that needs addressing. And mood changes for many women, and like I said, the crying, the hormones, and all that. Many women will experience what's called the baby blues. The baby blues is normal. You feel sadness, you're weeping, you are more irritable, and it's called the baby blues, the first baby blues of postpartum. And it happens within the first few days or weeks following delivery and can last up to a few weeks. I'd say up to a few weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, when your body somewhat finally adjusts, somewhat finally gets to a place where it's like, okay, I can function again. So mood changes in the baby blues. You're crying, you're happy, you're sad, you're angry. Your body's trying to figure out, where am I? How are my hormones supposed to respond and react to this? And I say traumatic because it is a traumatic experience your body went through. You birth a child. First of all, you had a child in you that took and absorbed so much. And now the child's in the world and your body's like, whoa, haywire, let's readjust to normal. What is normal? So there's that. And baby blues affect 70 to 80% of new mothers after childbirth. So it's a significant amount of women. It's very rare when a woman does not experience any type of baby blues and just bounce back immediately emotionally. And bounce back is a loose term, by the way, that I'll be using. I don't mean that by any means to say if you haven't bounced back, you're odd or awkward or anything. All right, so before we talk about postpartum depression, let's talk about our second sponsor for today. Our second sponsor is 7 Weeks Coffee. 7 Weeks Coffee is pro-life, and they believe in making more babies, which I believe is the right thing to do. We should be making more babies. They are premium coffee, and honestly, one of the best coffees that I've had. Love to drink or have a sip every morning before baby Sarah wakes up. So use my code VASHTI10 for 10% off your first order. That is VASHTI10 for 10% off your first order. All right, let's talk about postpartum depression. Postpartum depression is one of those things that people don't really talk about. We don't want to talk about. We don't care to talk about because it sounds depressing. And honestly, there needs to be more conversations on this. And that's not to hone in on negative talk or negative concepts, but the reality of what women go through, if untreated, it can be detrimental. So I was talking to a couple women a couple weeks back in gearing up for this episode because personally, I had the baby blues. I was crying, just my body going through a lot. Again, like I said, I had certain expectations for what birth and delivery would look like and what postpartum would look like. I wrote my plans in pen and God said, oh, no. You need to settle down. And I think too, it was very humbling for me because it allowed me to understand what sabbatical should look like. And it's taking time to just be with the Lord and reset. And the first 2 months allowed me to reset completely. So I'd say the baby blues lasted about 4 to 6 weeks for me. It was pretty bad the first 2 weeks and when I say bad, it's like I was just crying all the time, just crying. And I'm not a crier, like I said. But for women, for other women, I know postpartum is very, very hard. I'm not going to downplay and say postpartum wasn't difficult for me. I mean, I think it comes with this natural difficulties where the baby's not sleeping, you're adjusting to motherhood, you're not producing enough milk, or your milk's coming in a little bit later, or the baby's crying and you don't know what they need. So all of that, I believe, is very natural frustration, natural, and your hormones are trying to readjust. It's a natural way of your body responding, is crying and feeling overwhelmed and having anxiety and all these different things. I think your body responding in that manner is natural, and it's saying, hey, there's something going on. You're trying to fix it. Here is how we're responding to it. However, if it goes untreated, if it is prolonged, it's what we called postpartum depression, and it's often triggered by drastic hormonal changes. Postpartum depression is a mental illness that requires treatment by a doctor. It causes sadness, emptiness, or thoughts of harming yourself or your baby. And I do want to talk about this a little bit more extensively. like I said, I was talking to a couple girls who had recently given birth and some that have had children before and gearing up with this episode. And they were honest. And I asked them honestly to tell me what postpartum was like for them. And some of them, talked about intense mood swings, just feeling low all the time, low interest of things that they used to enjoy. So for me, if I had postpartum depression, it would be, I would not want to go running anymore. I would care less to go to the gym. I would care less to go run. I wouldn't even care to go outside. Difficulty bonding with your baby or feeling little to no joy in parenting. So that's what some of them mentioned. Their sleep, eating patterns, or their weight change. So they gained a tremendous amount of weight. They started binge eating, or they just slept all day and just had the baby cry. Feeling irritable, guilt, shame, worthlessness, hopelessness, helplessness, problems concentrating or making decisions, thoughts of death, suicide, harming themselves or harming their child. So postpartum is a very real thing. Postpartum depression is a very real thing, and I don't want to take it lightly. I think for a lot of people, we take the concept lightly because you have not given birth or you haven't gone through that process of giving birth. So you think, oh, it's not that hard. But if you put it into perspective, and even though I haven't dealt with postpartum depression, I know a lot of women who have, and I sympathize with them because I understand how much your body has gone through, how much your brain and your heart is going through, and lack of sleep, hormones a whack. Maybe you're a single mom and you're going through this process alone, and you're cooped up in a house. You're just trapped with your thoughts. It's easy to feel alone. It's easy to feel like you're worthless, hopeless, helpless, because you're staring at this beautiful human and you just don't know how, because you're a new mom, or you could be a new mom for the third time. You just don't know how to cater to their needs. So it's natural to some degree to have these thoughts, to have these emotions. But if untreated, if you choose to walk this path alone, it can become detrimental. They call postpartum psychosis. It's a rare condition where that can cause hallucinations, paranoia, obsessive thoughts of your baby. Women with this condition needs immediate treatment. With this type of postpartum symptom, you have thoughts of envy, jealousy of your spouse, etc. So postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis kind of somewhat coincides. They both need medical intervention immediately because you cannot just cause harm on yourself. You can cause harm on your baby. And my encouragement to you is to talk to someone. I am privileged to have a spouse who walks with me in this journey and that I can be fully vulnerable with and honest with. I think it was the first week in, I shared this story with a couple of my close friends. I was so fearful of having Sarah because I love my husband so much. And that sounds so cheesy, but it's true. I love being married. I love having my best friend. I love just Jared and I, the life we have. I just loved everything about it. I don't even know I just love, it's just so fun. And one of my fears leading up to delivery, and I explained this over and over to Jared, was I would just hate to lose us because we have a responsibility and we have this new person to love. And I know we're going to love them so much, but I don't want to lose us. So I think it was a week in doing my mom duties, feeding her, changing her. And I knew, I hadn't vocalized it yet. I knew internally I was fighting to love her because I told myself, if I don't love her fully, then I could give all my love to Jared. And I can't remember where we were, but all I remember, which was one of the sweetest moments, is Jared I think he turned me towards him and he said, honey, you have permission to love her. And I stared at him and he said, honey, you have permission to fully love her. And I wept and I cried because he saw deep inside of my heart. I was aching to give her all my love, but I was cautious to because I wanted to give all my love to Jared. And in that moment, he taught me I am capable of loving him and her equally. Him, obviously, more because he's my husband, but I shouldn't neglect to give her all the love I'm capable of giving her because I'm scared of losing him. And he reassured me, you're not going to lose me. You still have me. You still have us. So it's one of those, it was a beautiful experience, but that just goes to show mentally you go through all these different hoops in postpartum and you think certain things and, you know, your emotions are all over the place. But like I said, if it goes untreated, if it goes to a point where you feel alone, you're having these hallucinations, you feel just helpless and hopeless, you have to find someone to talk to. You cannot do this journey alone. And I sympathize with single mothers. How do they do it? I do not know. And I'm pretty sure it's with help and support because it's hard. It's very, very, very hard. And that leads me to my last thing here when it comes to things I didn't know about postpartum was the love. You just love this new human, this life that you created. It's unmatched. Just a newborn, even with all the crying and the blowout diapers and the sometimes fussy nights. It's beautiful and you just love every part of it. And the hard days does not outweigh the love that you have for your child. So my encouragement to you as we wrap up this episode on postpartum, if you're going through this journey, is very practically eat a balanced diet. That will help significantly. Eat a balanced diet. Make a habit of physical activity daily. Go for a walk. Go sit outside in the sun. Vitamin D does wonders to your emotions. And that's scientifically proven. You can take vitamin D supplements if you'd like, which a doctor, your postpartum checkup, they will encourage you to take vitamin D. And even for your child's doctor, I don't know why I'm blanking on the name, but your child's physician will also encourage you to take vitamin D, and that helps with postpartum depression. However, or postpartum in general. However, just go outside and sit in the sun. If you live in a sunny area, sit in the sun, go outside. I can't emphasize how important that is. Limit your use of alcohol or caffeine. Caffeine is one of my big things. I love, 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 love coffee. But I have to limit that because caffeine has its negative effects. If you already have anxiety the first couple weeks of postpartum, maybe step back a little bit on that caffeine. Just dial it down a little bit because it will react with it and your anxiety or the anxiety will feel a little bit more elevated than it needs to be. Ask for help from your partner or family members and friends. Ask for help. Oh my gosh, ask for help. You're not in this alone. Even though you feel like you're alone, don't be so prideful to say I need help. People want to help you, but a lot of people step back because they don't want to get in the way, they don't want to intrude, or they don't even know how to help. So ask for help. Take time for yourself, even if it's just a few minutes, and just to be alone. And that's something that I found was very hard to do because I love my baby. I feel like she depends on me, which she does for everything. But I have days, I've taken maybe 3 or 4 days for myself so far where I just walked around TJ Maxx and just window shopped. Or I got my nails done. I took an hour, got my nails done and came back real quick. But that time apart does wonders on your brain. And that's not to say you hate your child or you don't like being around your child, but you need to take care of you first, because if you're not well, your child won't get the best of you that you can give them. Practice stress management techniques, pray, have compassion on yourself, journal if you like to journal, speak to others who've experienced similar similar to what you're going through. Seek support from a mental health professional. Something that I do is listen to worship music. Start a postpartum devotional. There are plenty on the Bible app. And then choose your hard. That's something that I wanted to end with. It's hard to be alone with a screaming baby. But it's also hard to get up and go outside and get some fresh air. It's hard to save money, but it's also hard to be at retirement age with nothing to your name. So just choose your hard. It is hard to stay, cooped up and stay with your thoughts, or be at 3 a.m. and just have, all these random thoughts in your head. But it's also hard to ask for help. So you get to choose your hard that you want in your postpartum journey. I'll end with this, a couple of verses. Psalm 55, verse 22, cast your burden on the Lord and he will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. Matthew 11, 28 through 30, come to me all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Matthew 5:4, God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Psalm 46:1, God is a refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. I love being a mother. I love this journey. I love being pregnant. I'm not ashamed to say I loved being pregnant. I loved it so much. I loved my baby bump and this new journey that I'm on. And I want to encourage you to love it too. You get to choose whether or not you love it. You get to choose what you hone in on and narrow in on. And postpartum might be a very rough journey for you. Postpartum might not. It might be super easy. But I want to encourage you that you're not alone. Talk to someone, make mom friends, and seek help if you need help. But on that note, I will see y'all next time.